Hello, everyone. I'm Orlando Ruiz Jr. Thank you very much for hanging out with me for a little bit. And it is part 3 of my top 25 greatest movies of the 1990s. So we're finally here at the top 10. So gonna go ahead and kick it off with Heat. That is number 10. Michael Mann film, came out in 1995. I do have a review on this channel if you want to check that out. And, this was one of those great surprises. I don't think a lot of people were expecting this movie when it was announced. So it just felt like the right thing at the right time. These two great acting giants coming together in a film. First time since Godfather 2, which they never had any scenes in that film. So yeah, what a great experience this was then, and great experience even now. Everyone knows Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. So check them out in this film. It is two great actors giving two awesome performances in a brilliant film. We have really a cops and robbers movie here, but told with a real sort of style and flair from Michael Mann, who, if you all ever check out his movies like Thief or Collateral, has a really cool sort of feel on crime films and nice handle on them. And brilliantly edited film, very well shot, great cinematography. Have nothing but great things to say about it. And it's one of those rare, almost perfect films from this decade. So yeah, 95's Heat is my number 10. And what a great cast with Pacino, De Niro, and Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, Ashley Judd, Hank Azaria, Danny Trejo, Natalie Portman, the Allstate guy. Yeah, so many. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. Sorry. I'll look it up next time. But yeah, that was number 10. My number 9, Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. I really wasn't into Westerns when I saw this movie. And after I watched this movie, I wanted to watch more Westerns. I really didn't know that Westerns weren't supposed to be like this. But I guess this movie sort of was kind of a spin on sort of your typical Western, which is why Clint Eastwood got so much acclaim for the film. And I'm pretty sure something like this was unexpected, considering he was known in movies for just being a badass from beginning to end. Slow the fuck down, man. God, these people are idiots. Normally at this time, people were used to seeing the beginning of a film toward the end of the film, seeing Eastwood kind of invincible for the most part. And in this film, he is completely human and plays a sort of older version of his, the kind of characters that he played in his, sort of prime when he was a lot younger. So, this is such a great story, and I just love this movie. I'm a big fan of Eastwood. Not the biggest fan of his, private, sort of life and his, I don't get into the sort of political, whatever these movie stars, whatever their political views are. I don't care. I just try to enjoy them for, the talented people they are. And Eastwood, for a long time, I think, when he was a lot younger, was sort of a one-note kind of actor. But as he got older, got a lot better. And not just as an actor and as a director. And I think this movie was the beginning of him sort of really coming into his own and developing just a great cinematic language that would later go on in movies like True Crime. Not True Crime? Yeah, True Crime. Was it 1999? Yeah, 98, 99. He also did such a great job in movies like Gran Torino, of course, and Mystic River. So I think the beginning of his sort of mark he would leave as a director sort of began around this sort of era, the early 90s. Because then, of course, get into the mid-90s, and he kept on directing, movies like Absolute Power, and then into the 2000s, like Space Cowboy, movies like Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, another early 2000s, late 90s movie. Late 90s. Yeah, 97, 98. But, yeah, as a director, he really proved himself. He was directing films even in his early career, all throughout his career into the late 60s. I'm sorry, not late 60s, I think. I'm sorry, into the early and mid 70s, or, well, yeah, late 60s. Play Misty for me. Kind of late. Well, I think that was early 70s. But yeah, he directed a lot of his own westerns. Films like Outlaw Josie Wales and Pale Rider. Actually, I'm gonna have to double check those facts. Get your goddamn facts straight. All right. I could edit that shit out, but I'm not going to. You can all see the flaws. See them, know them, and know that there will be more. Okay, that was, what, number 9? Number 8. Yes, Mr. Steven Spielberg's war epic, Saving Private Ryan, blew me away in the theater, along with my dad, my cousin, everyone that was there. One of those once-in-a-lifetime movie experiences that you only get with movies like this, which aren't very common anymore. The war movie was sort of, after this movie, really exploited in Hollywood. So many war films came out after this, and I think a lot of artists were trying to aspire to this kind of greatness, and some came close. I really think movies on this level, I get close to Saving Private Ryan, are movies like Black Hawk Down and We Were Soldiers, The Thin Red Line, but which also came out the same year. But for me, Saving Private Ryan, the story, besides everything that goes on visually that sort of blows you away, the story is what keeps you coming back to this movie. And even though there are moments that are really sad and hard to rewatch time and time again, there is a really great story underneath it all that holds it together. And, of course, you got Tom Hanks holding this great cast all the way through the film together as like a real unit. And it really feels like they were sort of looking up to him all throughout there. Yes, I could just snip it out, leaving it in. Yeah, it really feels like they looked up to this Captain Hillard and admired him. And they admired Tom Hanks. I'm sure by then he was already Tom Hanks. But yeah, Saving Private Ryan, such a great experience as a war film, as a drama. There really isn't many films like it, and a lot of movies, of course, there are a lot of World War II movies, but nothing done like this. Of course, after this movie, there were many attempts with a lot of movies just throwing a lot of violence at you. But, the story, the directing, that's where this really sets itself apart from the other war films that came out around this time, early 2000s. So many war movies came out in that time. And then, of course, 9/11 after that, the war movies just kept coming out. So another great war movie. This is, let's see, 10, 9, 8. Sorry, I got to keep track somehow. This is my number 7, and this came out in 95. First time I watched this movie, Mel Gibson's Braveheart. Mel Gibson really knocked it out of the park directing this movie. And first time I watched it, I remember we used to get movies in the mail. I got it because of this. The thing was, you spent like 13 pennies, you get 13 movies. And really cheap movies, practically nothing. And then later on, they started sending you more movies in the mail, and they started charging you for like $25 a movie. And we were getting VHS back then. There was no DVD at the time. So 95, I remember getting Braveheart in the mail, and I was like, oh, Mel Gibson? Okay, got to check it out. And one of the greatest movie experiences I've ever had, and every time I revisit this movie, it really gives me chills. This movie is thrilling in many big battle scenes, just shot in the most realistic fashion that doesn't get done anymore, because nowadays they just throw so much CGI at you, and you can always tell the difference. So it's really cool to see movies that you just saw real people, and things sort of felt tangible, and the violence felt just raw and brutal, and at times hard to watch, but also you can't look away. And William Wallace, one of the most badass movie characters in movie history. I know that this movie is famous for not being historically accurate. don't give a shit. It's entertaining and it's fun. You know, same reason why I enjoy movies like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. You know, I don't, I don't care if Kevin Costner didn't go for the British accent. He was Kevin Costner. You know, he was like, fuck it, I'm Kevin Costner. I don't have to do that shit. And so I enjoy that movie just because it's fun, sort of swashbuckling adventure with sort of a darker 90s feel to it. And this movie, because I was into movies like that, this movie felt like sort of the next big Robin Hood, but this was something that just felt a lot deeper. You know, the story was epic, and this movie is shot just, Mel Gibson wasn't afraid to really be a filmmaker, and he doesn't hold back as an actor, as a director, the way he shoots the movie. You get such really sort of wide vistas and views of these great battles going on, and there's a few great battle scenes in the movie. And one day I will do more of a in-depth review of Braveheart. So I'm trying to keep these sort of brief because it's just a top 10 list. So yeah, that was number 7. Number 6, saw this movie at the drive-in, 1994. Robert Zemeckis' Forrest Gump. Yeah, the Green Mile is there. And yeah, this is my number 2. This is top 25. I'm sorry. The Green Mile didn't make the cut. For some people, I'm sure it's their number 1. But for me, as far as Tom Hanks goes, I know he has so many great movies that came out. Sorry, I get easily distracted by the fast cars going by. That came out in the 90s. Movies like Philadelphia, also another great film from this decade. But for me, Forrest Gump, it's the most rewatchable. It's the one that I come back to the most. I just love the story. I love the character. I love all the side characters. It's a movie that no matter how many times I watch it, I get emotionally invested in it. And you really feel, at times you feel sorry for this guy, but at times you're, actually kind of jealous, because he has such a really cool life. And, it really doesn't, it takes a lot to get Forrest Gump down. For the most part, he's always, the kind of dude that's, I guess, always in a sort of upbeat, kind of positive, just because he doesn't know any better, because he's so oblivious to a lot of the things going on around him. At the same time, is he? He has his own sort of just views. He's not conventional in any way because he is, sort of autistic or, somewhat mentally, I guess, challenged. But a lot of that works to his advantage. And, this movie, I can't really go into too much. Like I said, this is the top 10. I could go on and on and on about Forrest Gump. So eventually I will do a full-on review on it in a separate video. It is one of my favorite all-time movies and one of my favorite performances from Tom Hanks. Maybe my favorite. That's a really tough one. To think of your favorite Tom Hanks performance, there's so many great ones. Even his comedies are great. Movies like Big. I even love The Money Pit, and even what's that one? Turner and Hooch. I saw that in theaters. I go way back with Tom Hanks. The Burbs. The Burbs. Bachelor Party. Bosom Buddies. So, Tom Hanks. I try to be there for every one of his movies. He's not always in a great movie. Cloud Atlas might have its fans, but I'm not a big fan of that one. But, for the most part, I try to be there whenever he comes out in something. He was great in Sully. He's great. Pretty much, everything I see him come in recent years, come out in movies like Captain Phillips. Tom Hanks, one of the great ones. And Forrest Gump, just one of those great once in a lifetime sort of experiences that we only got, very few of these, in our cinematic lives. And to get it 94 when so many other great films were coming out, it was just a nice little sort of cherry on top, because 94, what a year that was for films. Movies like Pulp Fiction, Interview with a Vampire, Nobody's Fool, True Lies, Speed, 94, you know. So the list goes on and on. 94 was a great year for movies. But, well, Ed Wood came out in 94. The Crow came out in 94. So, yeah, that is my number 6. Top 5. We're down to the top 5. From director Spike Lee. I really love this movie. Malcolm X has one of my favorite performances from Denzel Washington. Even though he's really great in so many other films, I always go back to this movie, not just because it's a great story, but the performance here by Denzel Washington is always a great sight to behold. He takes you on a journey, Denzel and Spike Lee, and this movie doesn't try to convert anyone. It's not trying to sell you a religion. It's just telling a story, and it's a really great story, and a great sort of character growth. A man sort of starts out one way, and, you know, sort of later on educates himself and completely changes his life and improves his life for the better, and has a great effect on many people around him. And to this day, you know, many people talk about this man. So, you know, I just think it's a great story, and, you know, it is sort of has a tragic ending. You know, a lot of the great sort of documentary biopic movies, not documentary, but I'm sorry, yeah, biopic films. You know, a lot of them do end in tragedy because they are, you know, stories about real people, and real people, their stories are usually told after it's ended in some way, and usually it ends in some kind of tragic way. So, you know, I will eventually do a full-on review about Malcolm X, because it is, on a technical standpoint, it is one of those movies, like Scorsese's Goodfellas, where editing-wise, even though it's a 3-hour-long film, it doesn't feel like it because it goes by so quick and very easy to digest in that way. It is very beautifully shot, very perfectly edited. Acting in this movie, everyone is great. You know, even Spike Lee does pretty good in his sort of small role that he's in. And, yeah, you know, of course, Denzel always brings it, especially as Malcolm X. So, yeah, this is my number 5. And for many more reasons, eventually I will go into in a separate video. Yeah, Malcolm X is one of those movies that I just love to go back to time and time again, because it's so damn good. It's really, really, it's not just good. It's great, actually. It's one of my favorite sort of biopic films, and maybe actually, since it's number 5, it's actually, correction, it is my favorite biopic film, now that I think about it. Never really made a sort of biopic movie ranking in my head, but considering, yeah, this is my number 5, well, I guess biopic films of the 90s. I am talking about the 90s. I need to remind myself that. So, need to watch what I say. Yes. Favorite biopic film of the 90s. Number 4. Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List. Hard to watch this movie. Really hard to go through this movie over and over again and sort of try and dissect it. But if you really are a fan of film, I think one sort of has to, considering on a technical level what Spielberg was able to accomplish with this movie. Because for the most part, you can lose yourself in this movie in terms of feeling like it's something that really is something that's going on before your eyes. And on a technical level, that is, you know, something that not many filmmakers are capable of doing. And yeah, it really immerses you in not just the time period, but the horrors of what's taking place in this movie. And to think that these were real people that had to endure, you know, these hardships, it brings tears to your eyes upon every rewatch. And Liam Neeson, Ralph Fiennes, you know, Ben Kingsley, they are great in this film. They show why they are some of the greatest actors of their generation. And, you know, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to view this movie and sort of bask in its really perfection in terms of what what it achieves and what it sets out to accomplish, because that's what it does. It does, and even more than that, it really lingers, and it leaves you thinking of the things that you hold dear, and what would you do in these kind of times. And the character of Oskar Schindler is a real hero, and this movie has real victims that to this day, their own children are, I'm sure, still feeling the effects of what happened to them. So yeah, this is one of those movies that I'm just grateful that this came along at a time when, movies like this were still being, made. Not many studios will take chances on a Holocaust film. So because Universal and Spielberg, because they're sort of worked in tandem a lot, and he has his offices there, Amblin Entertainment and all that. They made so many great movies together, Spielberg and Universal, and this is one of their greatest achievements. And for me, this is one of the greatest films of all time, not just one of the best of the 90s. The rest of the movies on this list, for the most part, actually most of the movies in my top 10, I consider the greatest. In this list, I mean, in the 1990s top 10, I do consider some of the greatest movies of all time, some of the greatest movies ever made. The 90s was such a great time for movies, as this list completely demonstrates. And I know it sounds like I'm, sort of tooting my own horn there in terms of like, I'm telling y'all, like this is the best, but this is just my opinion. Seriously, this is, my humble opinion, and my own, interpretation of cinema, of high quality cinema. And, Schindler's List. Eventually I will dive into it in a separate, video, like many of these movies that I haven't, done that with. But yeah, it's number 4, and Steven Spielberg, he's a master, and he has so many movies that demonstrate that, and that's definitely one of them. Number 3, we're down to the top 3. Shit. Wrong one. Oh, I'm fucking up. There it is. Number 3, Shawshank Redemption. The Shawshank Redemption. Directed by Frank Darabont. Frank Darabont has some great movies under his belt. Movies like The Green Mile, which I also really admire. Movie like The Mist, which really pisses me off when I get to the end of the film. But yeah, The Shawshank Redemption was another one of those perfect films that doesn't come along very often. I love prison movies. I really enjoy movies like Escape from Alcatraz, American Me, Lock Up with Sylvester Stallone. Prison movies can be very entertaining. And every now and then you'll get one that is more moving than most. And this is probably the most moving prison film I've ever seen. The story of Andy Dufresne and his friend Red, played by Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. It is one of the all-time greatest, bromances. And their friendship, it's something that I really kind of admire. And it's a beautiful film. There are moments that are, sad, moments that are tragic, moments that are, funny. There are great moments of levity. There are many sort of moments that'll take you back and sort of just make you think shit. I don't think I could handle that, and this movie will put you in this sort of situation. You will feel like you're in there with them. And that's just, really great directing and screenwriting, and great performances by Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. And there's a great supporting cast as well. William Sadler, I think, plays one of the inmates. He was one of the villain in Die Hard 2, and I think he was also in The Green Mile, another Frank Darabont movie. I can't think of anybody else really. I think, there was a guy that played Eddie Caputo, I think, in Child's Play in 1988. I think he's one of the prison buddies. But yeah, Shawshank Redemption. Very heartwarming movie, very entertaining from beginning to end. It is a long one. not 3 hours long, but does almost sort of get there. Well, I guess like 2.5, something like that. But doesn't have a single wasted moment. Every moment in the film is perfect, and yeah, one of the greatest movies of all time. So that is my number 3. Number 2, yeah, there is no denying. Number 2, Quentin Tarantino, Pulp Fiction. You know, to be honest, number 1 and number 2 are sort of interchangeable for me. It's hard for me to go back and forth sometimes on which one is, you know, my number 1. But I guess right now, number 2, yeah, for the most part, is this film. This movie really is one of the most rewatchable movies I've ever seen. I rewatch it more than most, and it is my favorite Tarantino movie. To me, it's his best film, and I love the way this movie unfolds and tells the story, you know, in a way that Tarantino has made famous. But this is not the first time that movies were, you know, being told this way. It's just the first time that someone did it quite like this, I guess, because you know, there are movies like Citizen Kane, you know, that sort of start at the end and work their way back. But yeah, Tarantino, you know, he has his own category in terms of genre. Tarantino is a genre unto himself, and the world he built throughout his first three movies, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, you know, the characters that almost feel like they could be part of the same world, you know, with Michael Madsen's character and the John Travolta character here, you know, Vincent Vega and Vic Vega, you know, could be, you know, brothers, you know, it's said. And the Big Kahuna Burger, you know, is a thing that's, you know, pops up in a lot of these movies, even in a non-Tarantino, a movie that was written by Tarantino, a movie like True Romance, which I will eventually definitely do a review video on that film. That's another movie that almost made this list as far as into the 25. But yeah, Pulp Fiction, it blows my hair back every time I watch it. Every time I watch Samuel L. Jackson with his monologues, it reminds me why I love movies to begin with. They're so exciting. It's everything, even though I know everything that's coming when I rewatch this movie, I get excited just thinking about what's going to happen next, even though I know what's going to happen, because it's so much fun. And these characters are so awesome. And some of them don't meet the best end, but I really love how, you know, all these people really do feel like sort of a version of something that we've seen before, but has a Tarantino spin on it. And the guy is a master of American filmmaking, and Pulp Fiction it's his masterpiece in my opinion. Love Pulp Fiction. Can't say enough about it. Eventually I will talk about it, and that'll be a long review video, I'm sure. As will this one, my number 1. Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. Saw this movie at a very young age when it came out in 1990. I must have been like 7 years old. And of course, didn't have any business watching something like this at that age, but you know, I think I had already seen The Untouchables. I'd already seen Scarface. So this was just another sort of typical day in my house as far as viewing material goes. And yeah, Goodfellas is such a fun ride and really makes you feel like you're a part of the mob experience. Unlike most movies that have come out before or have come out since, this has this really, well, anything that comes close is going to be a film made by Scorsese. If anything that comes close to feeling like this, it's going to be something like Casino. But for the most part, nothing makes you feel like you're immersed in this world completely as Goodfellas. Even though the Godfather films do have that kind of feeling, it's a completely different style of filmmaking. You know, the Godfather films are more traditional, as what this movie was a real sort of new style in terms of really quick, sort of fast-paced editing, really short scenes that really did pack serious punch. The whole movie feels like a gut punch. And when you get to the third act, she's home. When you get to the third act, you feel like you're on this sort of coked up, running errands sort of ride with Ray Liotta's character, Henry Hill. He's almost crashing. He's going to the hospital, getting checked out, trying to cook, some kind of pasta and a soup, and for his brother, some sauce, tomato sauce for his brother. And, all his priorities are all like fucked up because he's really trying to sort of manage his sort of little kingpin, little mini kingpin thing on the side so that Polly doesn't find out. But, he's, at the same time, the sauce is just as important as the coke deals that he's making, the money that he's picking up, or the guns that he has to take to Jimmy's house. And, on top of that, there's the girl that doesn't want to go anywhere without her hat. And oh my God, it gets really insane. But, Goodfellas, yeah, it's a one-of-a-kind movie experience that you only get with Martin Scorsese movie. And he really surprised so many people, I think, when this movie came out, with just how hard this was going to hit. And enough can't be said about Joe Pesci's scene-stealing performance. His part in this movie, he will always be remembered, I think, for this role. Oh, there's another annoying sound that's going to distract me. Loud plane. But you know what? This is, like I said, these movies, these are some of the greatest of all time, and eventually I will go into them. These are modern classics to me. Goodfellas for sure. Martin Scorsese, another 4-star movie from him, and one of the greatest mob movies in history. Is up there with The Godfather. So, yeah, that is my top 10 of the 1990s. So, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up before I just heard a car pull up, I think, any day. Yeah, eventually if she decides to walk in. She's been sitting out there, I think, for about 5 minutes since she pulled in the driveway. I heard somebody pull up in the driveway. I think it's my wife. So, she's out there running errands and stuff, about to come in and yell at me, telling me to help her out, something around the house. So I'm going to get off and see to the wife now. So thank you very much for checking out this part 3 of my top 25 greatest movies of all time. Of the 1990s. Some of these are some of the greatest movies of all time. I'm going to leave the mistakes in there for y'all. I could take them out. I recently figured out how to do that shit, but leaving them in there. We all make mistakes. And as you can see, nobody's perfect, especially not Orlando Ruiz Jr.